There we go. That's good. How old is your kid? Is you have a son or a daughter?
I have a 15-month-old daughter coming up on, yeah, she'll be 16 months coming up on November the 5th.
How
So
old are you?
well, it's funny, my birthday's actually on Saturday, so I'll be 29. I'll be
Oh
29.
man, you're
Yeah.
so young. That's amazing.
I got a lot of life ahead of me, man, but yeah, everything's good.
That's good. You're getting started early. So
Yeah.
when you're my age, your daughter, your daughter will be 15 years old.
Are you serious? I
Yeah,
guess well,
yeah. I'm 43. It makes a difference when you have kids, at what age you have kids, because you think that like you're gonna feel the same and have the same energy and everything, but you don't. It's hard. You know how much energy it takes to have a little toddler.
yeah,
At,
absolutely.
at 29, you have a lot more reserves to do everything than you will, in your mid 40s.
Yeah, we'll see, man. Like I said, I honestly, it's been like having kids, man, is one, if not the most beautiful things human beings can ever like be a part of. And I know you probably feel that way with your, with your kiddo as well. But like, it's so humbling, but it's so beautiful at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And so, but like, obviously, in terms of like the hierarchy of the importance of relationships, so obviously first being your relationship with God, second being your relationship with your spouse, and then third, with, having a strong relationship with your kiddo. And but yeah, it's like having that top three as a hierarchy just totally changes your priorities, your um, like your goals and everything like that, which is obviously something that we'll chat about here later. But man, it's like you have time to do the things that you want to do. That's why time management is everything. And so obviously we can talk more about that. But yeah, man, it's like all your priorities and stuff, everything changes once you have kids, man. And I know you feel that way as well.
How long have you been married before you had your daughter?
So Maddie and I got married in December of 2021. So we'll be coming up on 3 years.
Is your wife a cyclist?
No, so she's actually a marathon runner. So we kind of balance each other out a little bit. But I used to be a competitive long distance runner. I had a 10-year background in competitive long distance running before I transitioned over to cycling. I started in middle school. Um, my dad was an endurance athlete. He was a runner in high school, real good runner. Went to the Air Force Academy. Didn't wasn't quite good enough to make it on their intercollegiate Division I cross country team there at the Air Force Academy because they're NCAA Division I, consistently in the top 25, for best cross country teams in the U.S. But he found cycling in college, and so naturally the kind of the running and cycling kind of came more natural to me, just because of his background in endurance sport. But
Did
yeah,
he
no, I had a 10-year background in competitive long distance running starting in middle school. I ran 2 years in middle school, 4 years, all 4 years of high school, and then I ran 4 years in college as well. I got a scholarship to run for college, so
at what school?
I ran at Oklahoma Christian University, which is up here in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is what brought me up here to the Oklahoma City Metro. I came up here, my first year at OC was in 2014.
Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Wichita, Kansas, because my dad was based at McConnell Air Force Base there in Wichita, and then we moved down to North Texas, small town called Van Alstyne, super super small town. Town's actually exploded in terms of population since we left, which my parents came up here in 2017. And so but I went elementary all the way through high school in Van Alstyne. We were there, or at least my parents were there, for about 17 years because we got there in the year 2000. Because my dad took a job for American Airlines and was based out of Dallas Fort Worth. So
Did you say your dad became a cyclist too?
So my dad he grew up in Kansas City, and he wasn't into like the ball sports. He wasn't necessarily super great at like football, basketball. Still enjoyed them, but he took up cross country when he was in either middle school or high school, and really started to do well at it. And um, so yeah, he really kind of picked up running probably around a little bit maybe after I did, but he was still a super competitive long distance runner when he was in high school, kind of like I was.
What's yours and his mile PR?
Oh man. So my dad, he ran very strong times. I think he was around a 440 something miler, and then he ran sub 10 minutes for 2 miles, around 9:57 or so.
Mhm.
So very, very fast times. I My senior year of high school, I unofficially broke the class 2A Texas state record in the 2 mile. I ran 9 minutes and 23 seconds for 3,200 when I was a senior in high school, which is what got me that college scholarship.
Do you,
Um,
do you know a guy named Ty Stanfield?
I don't, I, I don't think I've heard that name before. No,
Oh, okay. He
but
he was on my cycling team in the late 2000s, and
okay,
he he's a very good runner still, but he's like from the Houston area and ran really competitive in high school, and he ran for Alabama in college, but he's a
okay,
Texas runner guy. But I mean that your and your dad's running times is an indicator of you guys' genetic gifting to be able
yeah.
to run that fast. Do you or your dad know, do you have any VO2 max testing?
It's funny. I've never done any sort of formal VO2 max testing. You know how Garmin kind of gives you like,
Yeah, it's not accurate.
yeah, I was convinced that that's not accurate, but I personally have never done any VO2 max testing. No,
Have you ever done any lab testing?
I actually haven't, Matt. Yeah, I've never done any sort of formal testing in a lab or anything like that. That's always been something I was curious about and interested in. But yeah, no, I've never had I've never had really had the opportunity to do that. I think there's a guy who owns a shop that's in Norman that's close to where OU's campus is, and he like they of course they have the ability to do like VO2 max testing at the University of Oklahoma. But maybe if the opportunity pops up at the right time, like in training or something like that, maybe I don't know, maybe I could go down there and try to you know see what kind of numbers I could hit. I would love to try it like at like right when I'm about to peak. I think
Right.
yeah, I think that would be a super interesting number to go off of. And again, obviously, there's bike racing, and then there's numbers and everything like that, which big numbers don't necessarily translate to results on the bike. So I have that understanding, but no, it's always been something that I'd really be interested in, just kind of seeing where my limits are.
Yeah. I've done it. I've done it maybe 3 or 4 times in a lab with the ventilatory testing where
Uh-huh.
where you have the mask. And I don't think they were doing prick testing for your blood lactate level in those days, but
Hmm.
it the VO2 max number is not very useful or helpful. I mean, it's interesting to know
Hmm.
just to compare yourself against other people that their number, but the lab testing is good to really show you exactly what your zones are because
Yeah.
it that lab test. Now you wouldn't want to do, a lot of the labs aren't set up to like do it on your bike.
Hmm.
You would want to bring your trainer and bring your bike. You wouldn't want to use like some lab stationary bike or a treadmill, anything like that. It would need to be exactly replicating what you do and use. But
Yeah, absolutely.
it'll give you, if you do the lab test, it will give you your exact zones. and
Right.
it's basing it on you know, the gases that are in your breath.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty good. But what I found is that the lab test zones that I got were pretty close to my zones that I estimated using like you know, your in the field test,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So that was it was nice to know that I wasn't really off or
Right.
far off. It didn't really make much difference. But
Mm-hmm.
for somebody who's newer in the sport, you know, you and I have, how long have you been cycling?
Man, I started so I rode a little bit in college just to rehab from injuries, which is one of the things I mentioned to you is I had my college career was ridden with injuries. I think I had one full healthy year, and that was my junior year of college. But and so because of that, I rode a lot. I didn't have a fancy bike. I think it was a Felt Z100 or something like that, a real basic road bike that my dad bought for me when I was home on break, I think my freshman year actually. And so I rode intermittently in college, but I didn't truly go all in on cycling until after I graduated, which was in 2018. And I started as a Cat 5, just like everybody else in the kind of in the USA cycling hierarchy.
2018
Yep. I've been
is when
racing
you
since.
started?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would say that's a fast trajectory. That's really good.
Yeah, well, I will say having, like I said, having that 10-year background of endurance
Right.
helps a lot. The only true difference is, and I'm sure you agree with this because I know you have a background as being a triathlete. It's just the different muscle groups.
Yeah.
Cardiovascularly very similar, but just the difference in muscle groups was the biggest curve, which is honestly why I just like whenever I got into cycling, Matt, I just wanted to enjoy the bike. I didn't do any structure at all. I just rode. I didn't do, structured intervals really until like I didn't have a coach until I was a Cat 2. And so I just really was, riding endurance and then, doing some hard rides with some of the local guys, for some hot zones. And, I guess you could technically consider that like your over under type intervals. But yeah, I didn't have a coach until I was a Cat 2. So I just wanted to enjoy the bike and just kind of build that aerobic engine, which I knew would translate over to good racing in the higher categories once I added that structure to my training regimen.
Yeah. I ask you that because somebody that's been doing it for a long time, you can kind of feel your zones based on what your experience, all the experience that you have in doing endurance training and stuff like that. So, but you know, just relating it to the lab and the lab testing and all that. But anyway, that's pretty interesting. So you got into it by doing rehab for running injuries.
Yep. Hmm.
Do you know if your legs are the same length?
Man, that's a great question. I think there was once in college to when I was rehabbing from injury to where the physical therapist that I saw that was employed by the school, I think she had one of I can't remember if it was my right or if it was my left, but one was like just slightly longer than my other. And again, I can't remember which one that was, to be honest with you, but I haven't had that measured really since
Yeah.
then. But then again, I haven't noticed any discrepancy really in my form. I haven't. I mean, honestly, what's been crazy, Matt, is the amount of overuse injuries I had running, and then translated over to the bike. I mean, with the exception of some crashes, like in terms of overuse injuries, I've had none since I started.
That's a really big blessing right there.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah,
How
huge.
tall? You said you're 5'11"?
Yeah, 5'11", 5'10", 5'11", just under 6 feet. Mhm.
What length cranks do you run?
So I run 172.5 right now. I had flirted with the idea of trying something smaller. Just kind of looking at some research behind some shorter crank lengths. Um, one of my teammates this year, Patrick Welch, he was the 2022 U23 national champion in the time trial. He runs 165 cranks for TT. I know a lot of guys do that. I don't know if guys like Brock Mason does that. He strikes me as a guy, as someone who would, experienced with shorter crank lengths, but he's a good buddy of mine. Again, I don't know if he does that or not, but I just know a lot of TT guys like him prefer shorter cranks, because it's not as big of a rotation around the pedal, and it can be more aerodynamic as well. But I've wanted to try that, but I haven't truly made that investment yet. But that's something I'd like to try.
Well, it's something expensive to try.
Yeah, it is. So we got to make sure if we're gonna do it right.
So, what injuries did you have running?
Man, I had everything from I had multiple stress reactions, stress fractures in my feet. Feet.
What bone in your foot?
Huh?
Which bones?
Oh gosh,
I had navicular and cuneiform stress fractures in my foot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I honestly, I can't even remember. It was, I need to freshen up on my foot anatomy, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, I had it in both feet. But my first injury was actually when I was a junior in high school, which I had a stress reaction I think it was my left foot, but then obviously
how many miles a week would you typically start getting injured?
Man, so I wasn't one to do like super high miles, because I know like a lot of college runners can push 90 to 100 miles a week running. I wasn't one of those guys that did like super high miles. I touched 70 a couple of times.
A lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of miles. My sweet spot was like that 40 to 50 range.
Yeah.
About. Yeah. But again, it was a hard balance, and I feel bad for my college coach, because with how many injuries he had, it was one of those things where it's like, how do we get the most out of it, but not do too much to put me at a susceptibility for injury. And Matt, I'll be honest, some of the injuries I did have, I had irritations in my hip and in my knees, but it was because I was overtraining during the summer when I was in between like my upperclassmen years in college. I wanted there for a while to get in a triathlon, and so I rode and swam a ton like over the summer just to get super aerobically fit. And then we used to have a training camp like for the 2 weeks leading into the beginning of the semester in summer, like going into your fall semester in college. And I have a small pull, a small muscle pull on my back, and then I'd be out for a week.
Right.
And then but again, that was self-inflicted. That was my fault. And that used to really frustrate my coach, because I was like super hungry to get super fit, which is good, but I wasn't wise in the way I went about that. And so I put myself in position to become susceptible to injury. And that's something that I've learned kind of moving forward, that I've tried to really be better at, with the training that I've done with cycling.
Do you wish that you had never run and that you had just started bike racing when you were a teenager or something?
Matt, I asked that question a lot, to be honest with you. But to a certain extent, it's like, you ask like, the whole what if thing is because, I think about, because I never went through the typical, junior U23 development pathway through USASI. I wasn't groomed in that program. And so, part of me wonders like, hey, how much better could I have been? Could I have made it to Europe, for example, or could I have, done something more than what I've done already? But at the same time, that's a pretty dangerous game to play, to be honest with you. And so, but honestly, at the same time, what I always come back to is I wouldn't have changed anything because whenever I officially picked up cycling, my body was mature enough to be able
Mhm.
to handle the kind of volume that's needed to be really good. And I mean, Matt, I'm sure you're probably aware of a lot of junior and U23 riders that come up through that. And again, I'm not saying everybody, but there's a handful of cases to where riders come up through that U20 junior, that U23 pathway, and they burn out when they're 25. You know,
Mhm.
and so I didn't want to burn out that way. And so realistically, I wouldn't have changed anything for me personally because I came into the sport with a mature, just cardiovascularly, I was mature. Physically, I'd done some lifting, and so my body was ready to be able to handle the difference in training. And so personally, I wouldn't have changed anything. No.
Before you had your daughter, what would be your bigger weeks? How many hours a week were you doing?
Um, so my biggest weeks of training for cycling was when I was racing with United for I think it was the 2022 season. I had some, like when I was getting ready for Tour of the Gila, which I did solo. That was a hard trip. Um, but I touched just over 400 miles a couple of times.
What about hours?
It was like 20 to 25 max.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never done like 30+ hour weeks or anything like that. But
What's your thoughts about the no, number of hours that someone needs to do in order to be able to race at a national Cat 1 level?
man, it's what's so crazy about that is it all depends on the athlete. So I know some athletes respond better to more volume based training, higher hours, for example, or maybe even at a lower intensity. But some respond well to less hours, but more higher intensity. And I was one of those riders in referring to the latter, to where my sweet spot and my consistent amount of training per week, Matt, was anywhere between 10 to 15. Um,
Is
but
that
like,
is that what you were doing when you won Speed Week?
mhm.
What year did you win Speed Week?
I won US Speed Week during the 2023 season when I signed with ButcherBox. Yeah,
Was what would be like your proudest results other than that one?
man. Obviously the picture you've got behind you, that was a pretty big one for me. It was such a great result for me personally, but it's also like so tough to swallow when you show up at a national championship race and you get this close to
Yeah.
taking that jersey. And
Yeah.
so anyway, that was a great result. But honestly, one of my more prouder results was when I won the most combative or most aggressive rider on day 2 at Armed Forces. The same year
Wow.
I raced with ButcherBox. I was in the breakaway. It was so day 2 of Armed Forces. If you aren't aware of it, it's 100K.
I've
It
done it.
Yeah.
I didn't finish, but I've done it. Started it.
Yeah, no, but I'm like, it's the race of 100 corners, which is how they call it or whatever. So you race 100K on a 1 kilometer loop, and there's like, what is it, 6 or 8 corners a lap or something like that. And so Matt, I had gotten in the breakaway. I was in there with Danny Summerhill and two of the German DCC guys. Andreas Meyer ended up winning that one from DCC. Two of the Legion riders, I think Will Harden from Echelon, and then one rider from CS Velo. Um, but yeah, no. After it was about 30 laps in or whatever, and everyone was just kind of looking at each other, and I just got done taking a poll, and I look back and they're 20 yards behind me. I just nuke it. I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna go for it and see what kind of daylight I can get. And I was off the front solo for 30K. So even still to this day, that was in terms of effort that was required to try to make that happen. That was probably one of the biggest days in terms of power I've had for that kind of duration. But yeah, that was one of my proudest results because I personally, and again, I know this isn't necessarily race related, but I'm a big military guy with my dad being in the military and stuff. So being able to stand on top of the podium at a race, armed forces, like that was a big deal for me personally, because that's just what that race, just the significance behind that event, and the fact that it highlights our great military, and so yeah, that was a really special result for me personally.
What was your placing you finished?
So I got fifth on that day, just because I had nothing in the sprint after being off solo for 30K. But yeah, I got fifth on the stage and ended up, I think, either fourth or fifth in the Omnium or something like that for the weekend. Which it's a 2-day Omnium. Excuse me, but
was ButcherBox paying riders?
I'm not 100% sure. I think they were, but I mean, I personally, I was not getting paid.
Do you know? I know somebody who knows, but I don't know. Do you know which teams now pay riders salaries? A salary?
I mean, I can only think of, I think, and again, there's honestly, I can count them on less than one hand. Just being honest. Yeah. So obviously the WR Devo teams, they're paying riders, I think. And again, I don't know how much, but I just know, like, just from that organization, I know that they have and or are paying riders.
WR Devo?
It's the Williams Racing Development. So like, like your Legion Blazers Aviators trio. And I think I'm not 100% convinced on this, but I think Project Echelon may be paying riders. But again, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. And then I think at one time or another, I do think ButcherBox was paying riders. That's and again, I can't speak to who was getting paid and what kind of salaries they were making. I think that at some point within the last year or two, they were able to pay some riders.
Sad state of affairs, isn't it?
It is, man. And I'll be honest, man, I was a little bit salty for a while because I was like, this is something that I could turn into a potential revenue maker, not just for me, but for my family. I know obviously it's kind of a tough way to make a living racing bikes, but if you're good at something, why not get paid for it? You know what I'm saying? And so, but at the same time, though, it's like, if you're getting in the sport for money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. People get into cycling because, one, it's healthy, two, they enjoy it, and then if you start to compete at the highest level and you start to do well, then you start to think about, is this a way that I could make some money for myself or my family, kind of thing. But yeah, man, and again, I can't think of the number, but I mean, back in the early 2000s, I'm sure you can probably attest to this when when you were racing at that level. I mean, is it safe to say that there were probably 15 or 20 teams, like domestic elite teams, that were able to pay riders a salary? I mean, do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, at least 10.
At least 10.
Yeah, it did, probably 15, and a lot of the guys, the top level guys were making, and this is 20 years ago money, 20 years ago money is a lot different than 2024 money.
Yeah.
Back then, definitely people were probably getting paid 70,000 a year plus plus everything, not spending a dime on anything, plus the 70,000 salary. I would think that's a safe number for the top guys in the US.
Yeah.
But those days are long, 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 long gone.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, like, even in that as well, I'm sure, you know, a lot of these teams and a lot of these riders had some kind of performance clause in their contracts, to where if they won a big race, they would get, you know, an X amount of dollars in bonus money from certain sponsors and things like that. But and Matt, it's like, it's so crazy because, you know, which again, this kind of ties into the question of, if I would have started earlier, would I have been able to partake in, you know, what you're talking about? But what's so crazy is that, you know, and again, a lot of it is based on the economy, and what companies are willing to invest in teams and athletes. And I was talking to a buddy of mine that I raced with a couple of years ago about this. He's like, you know, like, teams pursue sponsors, right? So they can obviously invest money in their program. And so what does the team give them in return? Marketing, right? They get marketing for their products. But like, realistically, how much ROI are these companies getting from investing in these teams, right? And so, and honestly, I'd be willing to bet that it's probably not a ton, to be honest with you. And I'm sure, it's been different, and I'm sure, you know, there's been some great marketing for some of these, you know, companies that are coming up, to where, you know, a team is able to give them a good ROI eventually. But at least just from what I experienced, and I mean, I've competed in the domestic pro circuit for 2 years now. I mean, not very long. It's That's just something that I've noticed. And so what we're seeing more of now, Matt, is that companies are not wanting to invest in teams because they can get away with paying individual riders much less. And so that's why you're seeing the whole, you know, gravel and privateer rider population start to go up quite a bit, to be honest, is because they can get away with paying less money for an individual versus, you know, if you say, you know, we're going to pay this guy, you know, 10 grand or whatever, and we're going to take care of all of his expenses. Well, that's is going to be a lot more economically, you know, uh,
Mhm.
there's going to be more benefit for that than paying 80K to a team and having to provide a bunch of other stuff. You know what I'm saying? And so it's
Yeah.
like, at least that's what I've noticed personally. I don't know if you agree with that, or if you want to kind of elaborate on that yourself. I mean, is that accurate?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know much about much anything, but um, I think a lot of it has to do with social media, and
Oh, it's huge, dude.
now you have the ability to be a brand influencer as an individual and
Yeah,
be more impactful for a company than what you just said. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And
yeah.
and,
It
and yeah,
No, yeah, no, it does. And what sucks is, like, I mean, yeah, I'm active on social media, but it's like, I'm not a social media influencer. Like, that's not like that. That's not me. Like, I'm not
if
a,
you if you were and you had the results, then that would be a way to monetize it.
oh, 100%.
Like somebody, I don't know if he makes money with it. You know, I don't know him personally, but somebody like Dylan Johnson,
Oh, yeah.
I would
Yeah.
imagine that he's to a point now that he could or already is able. You know, it's one thing to say, oh, well, this company gives me free product. You know, that doesn't matter. You need a salary. You need to be getting a check in the mail that
Yeah.
you can pay your bills with.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
somebody like him that's doing the level of content that he does is probably able to do that. But that you have to look at the amount of time that somebody invests in it. They're not A company's not going to give you a salary unless you're putting in hours to produce content. It's going to become a job in itself.
100%. And so I think what a lot of people have to come to is the realization of, like, hey, is this worth it, kind of thing?
Right.
Like, are you willing to, you know, put in the kind of work to in order to produce content? If the answer is yes, then obviously, you know, go for it. But if like, but I mean, like, obviously for you and for me both, like, I have a full-time job and a family. Like, I don't have time to make all this content and stuff like that. So to me, that's
No,
not worth it. You know what I'm saying?
no, that's a lifestyle thing, and it's going to be somebody who doesn't have a family and doesn't have a full-time job that
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
be more of a bike bum lifestyle.
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah, and so what I was just going to add on that, and again, I'm not sure kind of what, like, whenever you were racing, for example, Matt, like, were you working while you were racing, or were you like full time in on racing, like when, like in
Oh,
early 2000s,
no, no, I worked full time, and
right?
I would take short days and skip out early to do bigger rides. But I
Yeah,
mean, I had a lot more responsibilities than a lot of the other people did. But um, yeah, it's it's unfortunate that it's like that. But at the same time, I feel like the level in general in regards to the depth is not the same now as it was back then.
yeah,
There,
I 100%.
there's not as much depth of strength in the national peloton now that there was back, like you won't know some of the names, but back in those days it was a lot deeper.
Yeah, well,
The level was higher.
no, and 100% agree with that. And that again ties back to what we were talking about, is the ability for teams to pay riders salaries so they could dedicate more time to training, more time to racing, more time
Right.
to really everything. And
Lifestyle.
yeah, I mean, it's 100% a lifestyle. There's a good buddy of mine that I ride with and talk to a lot. I'm sure you probably know his name, Jason Waddell. He raced for Mathis Brothers back when that team was, they had a good pro team, and I mean, he was doing really well. I mean, he was winning your P1s at Gateway back when Hotter than Hell was a UCI race, like doing really well at those kind of events. So it's interesting to hear him talk about kind of like his experience, which is like late 90s, like, and kind of how it, like what the difference is now. Obviously, he stepped away for a while, but I mean, he used to talk about how, he and his buddies just pile in a van and, go to these race weekends for, be on the road for 2 months and, eat rice and beans every day out of the back of a van and just kind of live that lifestyle. And some people love that kind of lifestyle, but I just, it's just, there's just no way that I could live that lifestyle, man. It's like, you know,
No,
and,
but at the same time, on a macro level, your dollar went further back then than it does now.
oh,
It was
100%.
it was more of a possibility to live out of your van and just eat at gas stations and do it that way than it is now.
Yeah.
Everything's different now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people did it like that back then. That was a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, but, and again, just like you, for example, I mean, I never stopped working full time. I've worked full time ever since I started. And so, but I think there's a lot of value in that too, because it makes you manage your time wisely, and it makes you prioritize. Obviously, you have your income that's going to be able to, put you in a position to where you're able to have, your nicer equipment. You're going to be able to, put money towards, performance gains, things like training, things like that. um, and to me, at least, this is the case before I got married, and still to an extent now. Obviously, whenever you're married and have kids, obviously financial priorities obviously are going to, make sure that they're taken care of first before you're investing in all this kind of, product and whatever. But anyway, um, but it's able to fund your pursuit. That's why I think it's important for people to, I mean, at least try, at least, and again, I know it's not for everybody, but to at least have some form of income so that you're able to, have a much more stable environment that will enable you to, try to, make something out of it, if that makes sense.
Are you ever afraid on the bike?
Um, like in terms of racing or out training or
No, training.
training, sometimes.
Do you
Sometimes.
Did it change when you had kids? When you go and train on the roads, do you think about it differently now than before?
Yeah, I do. I do. Um,
Has anybody been killed on the bike around where you live?
um, not anybody that I know personally. There have been a couple of cases in the last 3-4 years to where cyclists either they're just recreational or, triathletes that have been hit. And in the very, very sad and unfortunate circumstance, I think I know of one off the top of my head that was killed, who was a dentist, who was a triathlete, and he was hit while he was training, and he died.
His
But
name.
I can't remember his name again, but one of a good friend of mine, her name's Heather Laufer. She's a inline speed skater, but also races bikes a lot. Masters national champion, everything. She was out training early in the morning, I think 2 weeks ago, and was involved. A car hit her, and the car just fled. Like, it was a hit and run. It's just, it
I would
sucks, man.
say I would say that maybe half of them are hit and runs.
Yeah, well,
I think a
I
lot
mean,
of them are drunk.
oh yeah, absolutely. And so that's why, like when I train on my days off, I train in the middle of the day, to where, like, I'm not training super, super early. Now, sometimes I do train early in the morning before work, but 98% of the time I'm on the trainer in my garage. And so yes, I look at training differently, and that's why I don't do near the amount of, like, big rides that I used to be. And I do loops that I know I've ridden hundreds of times before, so I know where I'm at all times. Maddie knows where I am. I mean, we have apps where, like, we could track each other to make sure everything's okay. But it's, the stakes are raised enormously once you have a family, and especially when you have kids, because I mean, they're dependent on you to come home and to provide for them. And so, yes, 100%, I look at it differently. And so I'm
Well,
not.
don't you live near Tulsa?
I'm in Oklahoma City, which is about 90 minutes to the southwest of Tulsa.
So where you live, are you able to get to roads that are low trafficked?
Yeah, so there's some of the loops that I do are on a river trail that's on the river here in Oklahoma City. And so there's loops that I can do that have no cars at all. I'd say about half of my training is done on that versus out on the road.
Wow.
Yeah, which is huge. And again, I don't do, like, if I have a hard interval session, like, I'm able to get outside of where I'm at, which I'm in a small suburb just north of Oklahoma City called the Village. But I'm able to get out of town within about 20 or 30 minutes of riding, which is nice.
Hmm.
Um, but I do have access to roads that are a bit more open. I mean, I have had close encounters there, but the traffic is much less than, living in, a big city, or, these, if you live in one of these bigger cities, and it takes just an hour alone to get outside
Right.
of the city, like New York or Boston, for example, to, like, go out and do some structure. It's just like, would you be better suited to do that session, indoors or something
Side.
like that? Yeah. So personally, I'm thankful for that. There's a few lakes around where I live. Like, I'm about 2 miles away from a small lake called Lake Hefner. It's about a 10-mile loop around the lake.
That's
And
good.
yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I don't train there all the time because it's pancake flat. I want to get some hill training in. But there's opportunity for me to get out of town fairly quickly, and go out and, explore some new roads, things like that. And again, I stick to routes that I've done a lot, just because I know where I'm at. I know how long it takes me to get home. I know where gas stations are. I know where everything is. So I'm not I'm not one to kind of adventure, like, you know 80 miles out of town, and,
Right.
explore near, like, I'm
Right.
not. I that's just not me.
What do
So,
you do? What do you do to make, do you do anything other than those routes to make it safer for you?
well, I mean, it's and I should probably invest in, like, one of those, like, light camera devices that you can put on, like, your seat post or something. I don't have one of those. I should, but I don't.
You not have a light at all?
No, I do, but I only use it, like, if it's like if I'm riding in the, like, early in the morning, or if I'm, like like finishing up like an evening ride or something like that. Like when it starts
You don't keep it
dark.
on there all the time.
No, I don't. Because I have to charge it and stuff. I'll take it off intermittently, but I personally have never used a light like for like when I'm training in the middle of the day, just because I'm out in the open and it's sunny and everything. But I mean, even just simple things like I kind of hug that white line on the road, so so I'm not out in the middle of the road unless I'm kind of out in the sticks or something and there's nobody out there, then I'll ride a little bit more in the center of the lane, obviously within reason. But there's been some laws that have been passed in Oklahoma that are making it more cycling friendly. Like cars have to allow at least 3 feet. I know it doesn't seem like a ton, but I mean that's a lot.
That's
And
all
I
you
mean
need.
you need at least that, right? And so there have been some laws that have been passed here in Oklahoma that make it safer for cyclists, like bike lanes on roads, things like that. So yeah.
It's something that everybody should think about. Before you have kids, it's hard to put it in perspective. But what really sobers you up is when you hear stories or you see a news blip and it's somebody that you know is really serious. Because the first thing that will pop into your head, that can pop into your head, is that, oh, it was just somebody who rides to the grocery store, or they don't have a car and they just ride around. They don't know what the hell they're doing, and it was their fault. But if
Yeah.
somebody who races, so let's say they've been racing and there's somebody that you had heard of and they get killed, then it's nothing they did wrong, more than likely.
Right. It was either with malicious intent or that just cars just don't pay attention and they're texting on their phones and stuff like that. It's very sobering. And
I think
especially, sorry, go
to
ahead.
me, it's the most important thing to consider if you're going to be a cyclist.
I
The most important thing is that you get home so that you can do it the next day.
100%.
None of the other stuff matters if you don't get back home.
No, it doesn't.
And there's things that you can think about in ways. It's all about risk mitigation.
Correct. Yeah.
You want to do it in a way that's the lowest risk, that you still get enjoyment from it. The least enjoyable thing would be to do it inside.
Yeah.
They,
100%.
and then the next best thing is do it outside where you're not going to encounter any cars, which is what you're doing on those loops.
Correct. Yeah.
But then the step up from that is you're going to encounter cars, and how do you encounter cars in the least risky way? And a big part of that, the biggest part of that, in my opinion, is where you live and the time that you do it. For example, this time of year, of course, it depends on where you're located on the globe, but there's certain times of the day where the sun is shining directly in your eyes as a driver. And
Yeah.
if the sun is in your eyes and you're there at your back, the sun is in your face, but it's in their eyes approaching you, you're in a really high risk situation at that point. And
Yeah.
that is typically at dusk. And those are things that you can think about. Like when it's that time of year, what time of day is that going to happen? In which roads am I going to be on at that time, where you don't want to put yourself in those situations.
Correct.
And I'm of the personal opinion, this is something that I actually do. When I see, like, say, for example, Bike Legal or Bike Law post a story about somebody that got hit, where they got hit or killed doesn't matter. I'll go on Google Maps or Google Earth and I'll look at the road, or if it gives me enough information, I'll have the exact point that they got hit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'll try and understand the scenario that they were in when that happened. and look
Yeah.
for patterns.
Yeah.
And
100%.
you can start to see some patterns. And for me, in my opinion, the most lethal roads to train on are 4-lane highway roads.
Oh yeah. No,
Even
I train on zero of those. None.
even if you have, let's say you have a full shoulder with a rumble strip on a rumble strip is good.
Yeah, for
Have the
sure.
rumble strip, but let's say it's there. The big highways, number one, you have to think about the speed differential. That's what's going to kill you, is the
Mhm.
speed differential. If you, like, for example, when I go to Costa Rica and ride, I can ride completely surrounded by cars, but they're all going 25 miles an hour. They're going the same speed as me. It doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah, for
weaving
sure.
in and out of them and
Yeah.
touching them on the side so I know where they're at. And
Uh-huh.
you feel completely safe. You
Mhm.
feel safer there surrounded by cars than you do being approached by somebody going 55,
Oh, 100%.
because you know any mistake they make and you're probably done. So
Mhm.
you you should avoid roads where the differential is high,
Correct.
and you put yourself in the mind of the driver and you think about their propensity to distract themselves. If it's a big straight road, it's so easy for you to pick up your phone and start distracting yourself, or
Mhm.
you're not even paying attention because you don't really have to. But if you're
Right.
on a curvy little 2-lane road with all these curves and the road just drops straight off, the driver subconsciously knows I have to pay attention or I don't want to wreck my $60,000 car. That plays
100.
to your advantage. That's
Yeah,
to your
absolutely.
advantage because you can think they have to pay, even if they're drunk, they're going to kill themselves because they're going to drive off the road.
Yeah,
But
100%.
if it's a straight road and they're drunk,
Yeah.
to think about it.
No, 100%. And I honestly, I Oklahoma, especially Oklahoma City, we're in, like, especially where we live, it's a grid. It's like 1 mile
Right.
increment. There, roads are going, it's the same, it's the same layout really up until you get, like I said, about maybe 20-25 minutes outside of town. But, you know, Western Oklahoma is pancake flat. So just like you said, drivers are much more likely to, really open it up, on those, flat roads. And I mean, they got a cornfield on the right, and then, oil field on the left. There's not a whole lot out there. But and that's why it's nice, because like out east of where I live is much more hilly, and just like you said, more of those two lane roads. It's not like, super windy or anything like that, but um it's there's a lot more elevation that people have to deal with. So that's why I do most of my training out east of town, because of that. um so anyway, so yeah, no, but I 100% agree with what you're saying, though. 100%.
We've covered a lot. I want you to be able to talk about something that you didn't want to miss. What is going to happen with Above and Beyond Cancer?
Yeah,
Tell me about that.
yeah, so obviously, like, I signed with Above and Beyond at the beginning of this past season. um Great program. Really enjoyed my time there. Randy and Adam are the team directors there. They've done a really good job. That program's been around for a while. And so they've had some really good riders come through there. And so I was excited to sign with them. And that one of the reasons why I decided to step away from ButcherBox and pursue a team which ended up being Above and Beyond Cancer was the opportunity to do a little bit more stage racing. Um, and again, I didn't really, I haven't, I've done stage races, but I haven't done like a fully supported, like, Redlands Tour de Gila. Obviously Cascade isn't around anymore. Excuse me. But that was one of the main reasons why I signed with them, is I wanted the opportunity to do Redlands at least one time before, either I had to step away from cycling, or I wasn't able to simply do it again. And so they obviously like they helped us, pretty significantly get out to these events. We had a sports director with us that was really helpful. Carson, he did a great job. Still talk to him pretty consistently. And so I was really fortunate to be able to have him. And so just like getting out to these events, these more stage events. I ended up doing Tucson Bike Classic also. That was one of the ones like earlier on in the year. But yeah, that was the draw to ABC for me. And so they gave me the opportunity to go out to some of these stage events. I didn't end up being able to go out to Tour de Gila just due to some scheduling conflict, because it sucks because Redlands and Gila were literally less than 2 weeks apart. So if you're trying to plan logistically, and I mean, if you have a family and kid, like that is really difficult to try to like navigate in terms of scheduling and everything. And so I ended up making the right decision because I had done Tour de Gila 2 years prior. And so, but I had never done Redlands. And so that was a really cool opportunity for me to go out there. But man, I will say it, like traveling with two bikes, a TT bike and a road bike, that's expensive. Like that's very expensive. And so, with the exception of that, I mean, to me, Redlands was another kind of one of those highlights for me personally, because I never
did you do there.
So I actually did pretty well. I didn't do well on the first day because I got myself boxed kind of going into that sprint. Like on stage one, it's got that massive hill going into the finish, and so I allowed myself to get boxed, and then I flatted like 50 meters from the line. I hit a pothole or something like that anyway. But I ended up like maybe top 20 in the time trial, and then I ended up back-to-back topped. I got 10th in the crit, and then I got 7th on the real famous like sunset loop. That was a big result for me. That was a pretty big result, especially considering I had never done that race, and people were always saying like, hey, only like 20 riders end up making the crit loop back coming off of the sunset. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit in all day, because Project Echelon has so much horsepower that, and I mean, Stites was in the yellow jersey, and so literally they just sat on the front because they have the horsepower to be able to do that. And so basically all I did, Matt, I just sat on their train. I didn't do anything. And because of that, I was able to conserve enough energy to be able to put myself in position to contest for the podium. And there's a cool little snippet video of the finish of that stage where Rem ended up going solo within those crit loops. Phenomenal rider, but he broke away solo and got the win. But I mean, we were pretty close. I mean, we're only like 4 or 5 seconds off of him when he crossed the line. And so I never contested a bunch sprint like that before coming off of a 90+ mile stage. So that was a really cool opportunity for me also. And then obviously USPRO, that's one of the highlights of my career. Even just being there is a huge win for me personally. It's just funny, Matt, because you can do, and again, I'm doing all this prep again, family, full-time job. I just don't have the horsepower to be able to compete with these World Tour riders. But to say that I gave it my best shot against, these World Tour guys like McNulty, Powless, Sean Quinn, it's something to be proud of. Mm-hmm. And I know how much, and that's why it was cool. Cause like, I really enjoyed listening to your video that you did with Brock Mason and Troy Fields after that TT, talking about TT stuff. And that was the last TT I've done. And I don't know if I'll do TTs anymore, to be honest with you, because like what it's done personally for me is it's just turned into an arms race, Matt. Like I don't have the financial backing to be able to invest in something like that personally. No. So anyway, I didn't have that opportunity, but I mean, I had the best time trial ever, and McNulty put 4 minutes into me. You know what I'm saying? So
do you remember, do you have a power meter on that?
Yeah, I did. I did 400 watts for 40 minutes, and I still got smoked.
Wow. That's how much do you weigh?
At that time I was probably just under 160, I would think.
Wow. That is amazing numbers, sincerely. And
Well,
to think that he put 4 minutes on you.
well, and again, part of it was my position. I look back at my position. My position wasn't super great, to be honest with you. But it's also, and again, obviously, like you have to wear obviously the equipment that's provided to you, especially when it comes to skin suits and stuff like that. But I mean, I had a custom skin suit, but it was it was blanket colors and it was a non ABC kit, so I didn't wear that. But and again, all
Why
those
didn't you
guys.
wear it?
Well, it was, and it had something to do with the team, to where I was told like, hey, you need to wear
Oh, okay.
like team issued equipment, which is like that's fine. Like I totally understand that, but I mean, in terms of skin suit stuff, it makes a huge difference. Of course,
Right.
PT like fabric and everything like that, and yeah, and so realistically, it was just like all those guys, especially the World Tour guys, and guys like Brock, they just have that stuff so dialed that there's really no room for mistakes, and so
Not at that level.
not at that level, no.
No.
But yeah, no, just being able to line up next to those guys and just give it your best shot, and being able to say, hey, I competed for a spot at the Olympics, that was a big deal. And then getting sixth in the crit, in the USPRO crit, one of the highlights of my career also.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you got 6. That's a really good result.
Yeah, so I got sixth at the USPRO crit. Cor, I don't know if you Flow Bikes actually published the race on there.
I
But
watched.
yeah, I mean, it was pouring rain the entire time, so it made it super interesting. But again, I think Echelon had 10 dudes in the race. I was like, come on, bro, 10 dudes, like everyone, like they have.
Oh,
It's
that
like,
made them being there and doing that probably made it a lot safer. I remember that, and it made it more steady and smooth.
yeah, yeah, it did. Well, I mean, they put their whole team on the front, and
Yeah.
they rotated 5 guys and did a team time trial, and that's why it was the same thing as what I said I did at Redlands. I just sat on their train, and then of course in the going into the 2 laps to go, they had, I think, Sam Boardman and Hugo dumped it in corner 3,
Yeah,
corner
they
2, and so that's when Rim and Bassett broke
right.
away. But so that obviously decided the race. But because I had all of the Williams Racing development teams fighting for that spot, they burned a couple of guys, and I just was able to, I pulled a little bit of brake and I let them come by, and then I slotted back in that way to try to save energy. Because I had one other teammate who unfortunately had a crash in the race, and so he wasn't up in good position, unfortunately. But they burned up a couple of guys, and I ended up just being in a pretty good spot coming out of the final corner, because the road in the corner, the last 2 corners were incredibly tight. Like
Mhm.
they were not wide. I mean, it was like less than a single lane, like it bottlenecked, and plus it was brick. So if you hit it just right, especially if it's wet, you were going to slide out and go. And I mean, there was a tree right there, so pretty dangerous. And so being able to be in that position at that point in the race, to be able to fight for a podium, I mean, again, that's one of those
Definitely.
career defining results for me. And then um, the last race I ended up doing for the season was Tulsa.
Mhm.
Was very consistent at Tulsa. That's back-to-back years that I finished inside the top 10 in the overall standings. I got 10th, and my teammate was 9th overall, Ben Oliver.
Mhm.
So yeah, so again, I'm incredibly thankful for that program. They did a lot for me, and I told Randy, how thankful I was. I'm not going to be with the team going into next year. I made the decision to step away from the team. Had some opportunities. Without revealing too much, obviously I'll go public with it here in the next coming weeks. But just to be able to not have a super race heavy schedule, just because of with my family, and we're trying to, at some point we're trying to buy a house, and so I've been really kind of putting work as an emphasis to bring in more income for us. So so we can just kind of be in that position. But I am planning on doing a little bit of racing next year. It's going to be a little bit more a little bit more regionally focused. So not really any national events with the exception of Tulsa. And then I may try to go out to Gateway late in the year, but we'll see. But it's just like we talked about at the very beginning. It's like, you know, whenever you introduce, you know, kids and you have a family and you have a full-time job, you have to prioritize obviously what means most. And if that means putting racing on the back burner, hey, that's just how it is. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because, you know, without the support of your family and your spouse, then it's just not worth it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
To that point, there's oh, I wanted to ask you about don't let me forget to ask you about your lifetime peak 20-minute and your lifetime peak, maybe like 5 second.
yeah,
There's a lot of guys that I've known about, and it's always going to be this way. But what you just said, I want to park on what you just said about you basically, in a nutshell, restructured your priorities. And what a lot of guys do is they don't restructure their priorities. And what they do is they get a divorce. They don't see their kid, and
yeah,
they continue to live out whatever it is that they're a slave to. So
correct.
they stay a slave to the bike and whatever they want to do, and they choose the selfish route. And
Yeah,
I commend you because it is a I guess you could say it's like a crisis of belief or a crisis of identity
it
in
is.
some ways. And when you're it comes to you. You don't go and look for it. It comes
Yeah.
to you. It goes right in front of your path, and you make a decision internally that, you know, becomes expressed outwardly about what you decide to do. And I just wanted to park on that for a moment because you're 29 years old. A lot of guys, you know, they wouldn't even take the step to get married because getting married is the next step before the step of you know, adding a family. But
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, let's face it. Let's face it. To be the best at anything means the elimination of everything else.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't have the maturity, and it is a maturity thing.
it is.
You can say whatever you want, but it takes maturity to say no to the lesser thing, to say yes to the greater thing. The easier thing is to say yes to the lesser thing. And no matter which way you slice it, your bike is a lesser thing than another human's life.
Oh, I mean, it's frankly not even a comparison. So the decision to step the decision to step away from racing after Tulsa was the easiest yet hardest decision at
Right.
the same time. You know what I'm saying? Is because obviously, like you're always going to have the bike in a sense, but at the same time, just like you specified, there's a very limited time that you have to be intentional, especially if you have really young kids. You want to be super present with them, and to be able and invest the time in order to, you know, to see them grow and develop.
Right.
And so that was the easiest yet hardest decision I've ever made. But would I change it? Absolutely not. Not even close.
So I don't want to get off track, but USPRO was before Tulsa. I don't remember.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it would. That made it easier for you. If it had fallen, say in August,
Yeah, that would have
you
been.
wouldn't wanted to let it go yet.
No, I wouldn't have been able to do it if it was in August.
So what is your peak 20? And I've considered you quite a punchy rider. What's your peak 20 and peak 5?
So I have my P. I haven't really done formal power testing in a while, but when I was racing with ButcherBox and I was getting ready for time trial nationals, like going into, because if you remember this, I'm sure you do. Tulsa was It
The week
was,
before.
yeah, like it was the week before, and obviously that was a huge emphasis for the team, was to do really well at Tulsa.
It
Um,
made it hard to be fresh for the TT day because the TT
oh
day
yeah,
was on Wednesday or Thursday, and you had
yeah.
to fly out of Tulsa maybe Sunday night or Monday.
Well, Matt, I drove. I drove. I
Yeah,
didn't.
so you were fried,
I was cooked. That's
right?
why I had a horrible time trial at amateur, Cat 1 nationals. I was horrible.
Right.
Anyway, but like leading into that, what I was doing, like when I was like with the result I had at Armed Forces and the effort that I put in, that was a lot of the training that I was doing. Is my coach at the time was Chris Carlson. He doesn't coach me anymore. We decided to part ways. Very very mutual. It was just simply because I wasn't racing. And so, but I was seeing power numbers that I didn't even think were possible like 2 years ago, or like prior to that. And so, Matt, and again, I did this on my TT bike when I was getting ready for TT Nats. I mean, I touched 429 for 20 on a TT bike. And
That's really
so,
good.
and at the time, assuming my weight was correct in Training Peaks, that was just under 6 watts a kilo. So I was very pleased with that. And a lot of the sessions I was doing, like they were big strength TT sessions, like 2x20. I did 2x24. I ended up doing 2x30, and just getting ready for TTs. And I was touching, like for the 2x30, I touched nearly 400 for both of those intervals.
That's awesome. That's
I mean,
so good.
yeah, it was like, in terms of the consistency and the amount of fitness that I had, that was probably the fittest I've ever been in my life. But so looking at my max 5 minute, actually it came in a crit this past year. I think I touched I think it was just under 470 for 5.
What about 5 second?
5 second, I think I've touched maybe 1350. not high by any
Yeah, but that's really good. What's good is to have both on both ends.
Yeah, for sure. And so, but see, I was never like, especially when it comes to racing, you have to play to your strengths. And my strength was not taking it to a bunch sprint. It was getting in a small breakaway, which you have to have a big engine to do. And then you have to have just enough pop at the end of the race to be able to win it. And
Right.
so that's how I tried to approach every race, which is what happened, at Cat 1 Nationals, which is the picture you have behind you. Is I got in that breakaway, took a big effort to be able to get in that breakaway, and then I had just enough, not quite enough, obviously, because I didn't win, but I had enough to be able to, contest for the win at least. So like I put myself in position to win. I just wasn't able to finish it.
Well, were you second wheel into the last corner?
So if you remember that course, it was like the start finish stretch was super long. It was like a false flat, like, and out of the last corner, I would bet that was probably 300 or 400 meters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it was a long drag uphill, and that sprint suits me. I'm not a fast, like a super like high speed sprint guy. Like that was a good sprint for me personally because it was uphill.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly, I was third wheel because I made up 1 or 2 positions going into because like the last 2 corners, it was basically a U because they were so close together. I don't know if you like, you obviously,
I remember it vividly.
yeah. So, but like, those 2 corners were super close, but going into that long downhill into the last 2 corners, I was able to make up 2 positions. And I think I was third wheel because the guy that was in front of Fury, I think was Tanner Ward or Spencer, which was his teammate he was leading out. And so I was able to get on Fury jumped first, and then I was able to jump on that wheel coming out of that corner. But if I'm mistaken, I think there was a little bit of headwind as well. But yeah, I mean, I just unfortunately couldn't finish it, but I put myself in position to win that race. And again, I tell people this all the time, is like, if you continuously put yourself in position to win the race, eventually you're going to win one.
That's right.
It just takes repetition, and it just takes, just being consistent in that process, with each event, playing each event to your strengths. So what are you going to do to put yourself in a better position to win and put others on the back foot? Which for me, some people, that's a bunch sprint. Some people love bunch sprints. Me, that's not me. I would much rather contest for a win out of a breakaway, which I know that's the kind of rider that you are too, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you'd much rather win out of a smaller group than, try to contest a 20 up sprint.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, it's like playing the strengths and being and consistently putting yourself in position to win. Those are the two biggest things. Yeah.
I think this has been really good. Are you going to race any national crits next year?
I will probably, I'll basically be doing Tulsa every year just because it's like a hometown race. I'll do Tulsa. I may go out to Gateway at the end towards the latter part of the year. I can swing that because they're far enough apart to be able, I can plan accordingly instead of having to, it being on back-to-back weekends or something like that. That makes it harder logistically to do. So I'll do a couple of national crit series next year probably, but and I would love to go back to USPRO at some point in my career, just because I feel like I have unfinished business after coming pretty close in that crit. So I would love to be able to do that at some. I don't know what the timing on that looks like. If that ends up being in the cards at some point here in the next couple of years, I would love to do that again.
Did you race? I don't think you raced. Yeah, you raced some heads up against Rainstorm this year.
Yeah, so we raced them at Tulsa, and then honestly, I think that might have been the only time that I personally went head to head against Rainstorm. But I've raced a lot of those guys. I raced them a lot back when they were ACG,
right?
Like the year before Roadhouse and ACG merged. But I've raced those guys quite a bit, and so that's why, whenever Danny Summerhill was on his tear last year and won everything, I used to poke fun at him and be like, hey, I got one against you at SPEEDWEEK, man. But man, those guys are so good. They're so good. Good. They're so incredible to watch, and I just from racing against those guys, I have the utmost respect for them. I've talked to Thomas Craven before, their sports director, really nice guy. And I've had the chance to get to know some of their riders, especially Danny. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he and I used to chat fairly frequently back and forth. So, man, I would love to see them continue to be on this massive tear. Just because I think, with looking back in the 2021 to 2023, obviously we saw, Legion was basically, crit the Kings, they couldn't be beaten. And then you had, the Best Buddies team, which a lot of those guys turned into the ACG Rainstorm, program. And so being able to have another team come from a different avenue than the Williams Racing Development teams and create that healthy competition, I think is really good for the sport. It is. And so it creates, a lot better, and it creates a lot better racing for spectators too. It makes it exciting. And so hopefully, and like I said, I'm excited to continue to race those guys at some point. Maybe I'll be lucky enough to get one against them at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah. So it would be great if you were mono in a break with some of them. I think
for sure.
I think if you're mixed in and it's all together, it would be hard to take them. It's with two to go, they're unbelievable.
Oh, they are. Well, and again, if you've watched them enough, and Thomas Craven is a master at tactics, because if you watch them, they always, at least from what I've seen and noticed from racing them, they do a late assault. Right. Because they have so many guys that can go really hard, but not for a long period of time. And so they do a late
half lap.
They do, 400-meter poles,
Right.
and then they're able to, you know, have two coming
They
out of the
can
last.
jump. Yeah, they can jump any train with 2 to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why, you know, racing them, it's like you want to be on that train, right? Because when they decide to go, I mean, they go.
Go.
And so it's like, you know, in in order to have success against them, you have to be in that position. And that's why it's so impressive to watch Luke Lamperti race those guys, is he is so good at freelancing.
Right.
He can just sit and he can put, but again, obviously he's a world tour rider now, and so he does, I mean, he's in that position all the time, right?
Right.
But so like, but being able to watch guys like him freelance, I think gives riders like me and other riders that are kind of racing, not solo but kind of, you know what I'm saying, is it gives them, you know, to say like, hey, you can have success as a solo guy in the midst of all these big, you know, teams that are fighting, you know, that have these big trains at the front of these races, to where it's all about positioning and timing, right?
Right.
And so if you're able to, you know, continue, like, be just in that right spot and kind of stay in front of that washing machine, you're gonna
Right.
have a lot of success, I think. So
Yeah.
it's good,
You
man.
got yeah.
Love it.
Well, it's good to do this. I've enjoyed it, and yeah, I wish you the best, sincerely. I think
Yeah, Matt. Thanks again for
you're
having
great.
me on, brother. And again, I haven't necessarily known you for a long time. I think the first time I met you was when we raced Speed Week together. Is that right? Does that sound right?
I don't even know if I met you then, but I remember talking to you in Roanoke.
Yeah, that's true. I remember talking to you after we raced that TT. But man, Matt, I really appreciate you, man. I really
Yeah.
appreciate your insight and your wisdom when it comes to racing and family priorities and stuff. So really appreciate this, man. I would love to do this again, maybe with you at some point, and just have a real honest chat like we did today, man. Really appreciate your time.
Well, the good thing about YouTube is it memorializes you, and your daughter will be able to watch this. Hopefully it still exists on the internet, but
Yeah,
20 years from now, she'll be able to watch this video. So I think that's the best thing about it.
yeah, for sure. And you know, we can close with this, is like, you know, it's important for kids to see, especially dad, do hard things. It's important to
Mhm.
see kids do hard things, or it's just for kids to see their parents do
Yeah,
hard things,
stupid.
because
Right.
it sets that standard of, hey, you know, it sets the standard of being disciplined and to take care of yourself and your family. And so even though it's not the easiest thing to do by any stretch of the imagination, it sets the standard for them when they grow up, and
Right.
they're able to, you know, come and approach life differently than kids who don't see, you know, mom and dad doing hard stuff. So
That's-
so
Thank you. We'll talk.
thanks, Matt. Yeah, hopefully
Okay.
we'll chat soon. Really appreciate you, brother. Thanks again for the
Thanks.
time.
Have a good one. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
you too, bud.